Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a spiritual framework that is, well, it's pretty intense. It offers a totally radical way of looking at some of life's deepest wounds. We're going to be talking about trauma, narcissism, and this idea of a hidden battle for your very self.
So let's just start right here with this question. What if trauma isn't just a psychological issue? What if it's something deeper? This is the rabbit hole we're going down today, looking at our personal pain not just as our own, but as part of a much bigger, unseen cosmic drama.
All right, so to really get a handle on this, we have to look at trauma through a completely different lens. This isn't modern psychology. This comes from the philosopher Rudolf Steiner, who saw us not just as physical beings, but as complex, multi-layered spiritual beings.
In Steiner's view, trauma isn't a single event. It's a 1-2 punch he called double trauma. See, there's the first hit, the thing that happens to us. But then, there's a second and in some ways, more damaging wound that happens inside us.
And here's the absolute key to understanding this. The first trauma, the external one, the abuse, the loss, whatever it is, that just weakens our spiritual defenses. It creates a vulnerability. But the second trauma, that's our soul's reaction. It's how we pull away, dissociate, and fragment ourselves to cope with the pain. That's what severs the connection to our true self, which Steiner called our I.
Now here's where it gets even wilder. Steiner believed these spiritual wounds don't just leave an empty space. Oh no. They act like an open door, inviting in what he called adversarial forces. And you know what the manifestation of these forces looks like? It looks a whole lot like what we today would call narcissism.
He actually mapped out these forces. You've got the Luciferic force, which is all about ego inflation, fantasy, and pulling the soul away from reality. Then you have the Ahrimanic force, which is the total opposite. It's about cold, hard materialism and control that deadens the spirit. And then there's the Asuric, which has one goal, to completely wipe out a person's individual self.
And this is brilliant, right? Because it shows how these forces show up in the real world as two very different kinds of narcissism. The Luciferic influence gives you the somatic narcissist, obsessed with charm, beauty, their appearance. But the Ahrimanic influence, that gives you the cerebral narcissist, the cold, calculating one, who uses logic and status as a weapon. They're two different masks, but they're hiding the exact same spiritual injury.
But let's move on to that third force, the Asuric one. Honestly, this is the most chilling part of his work. This goes way beyond just ego. This is about the total annihilation of the human soul. It's Steiner's spiritual take on what we would call psychopathy. Just let that phrase sink in for a moment. A simulation of humanity. In this worldview, the most extreme cases aren't a personality disorder. They're seen as something that's just mimicking what it means to be human. They've learned the script perfectly, but there's no actor inside.
It's this idea of an image without any substance. On the outside, this person can look completely normal, maybe even incredibly charismatic and successful. But on the inside, that core connection to a higher self, to any kind of morality, it's just been hollowed out. It's gone.
Steiner literally called these Asuric forces soul parasites. I mean, how creepy is that? Their entire purpose is to feed on and consume a person's I, their core self, until all that's left is an empty shell running on pure predatory instinct. No empathy, no conscience, nothing.
And Steiner's own words really paint this grim, final picture. It's a complete drying up from the inside out. The very life force of the soul just withers away into nothing.
Okay, so after walking through all that darkness, you're probably asking the most important question of all. How do you fight back? Is there a way out? And the answer is yes. Steiner's framework isn't just about the problem. It's also a guide to reclaiming your soul.
The solution here isn't a passive one. It's a conscious, active, 3-step process. First, you've got to develop the self-awareness to see these forces at play. Second, you have to build up your moral courage to stand in your own truth, no matter how hard it is. And third, you have to actively work to strengthen that connection to your spiritual core, your I.
And the great thing is, he didn't just leave this as some high-level theory. He gave people actual practical tools to build what you could call a spiritual immune system. Things like daily reflection, affirmations, and even protective verses you can use to shield your inner self from these negative influences.
This chart basically lays it all out. It's a roadmap to freedom. For every single spiritual trap, there's a specific antidote. You fight the false light of Luciferic pride with humility and truth.
You dissolve the cold, material control of Ahriman with genuine compassion. And you meet the ultimate threat, Asuric annihilation, by strengthening your own sovereign I.
So in the end, Steiner leaves us with this really powerful and really challenging idea. Our deepest inner struggles, our traumas, our run-ins with darkness, they're not just random personal problems. They are skirmishes on a spiritual battlefield, where the very future of our soul is on the line. And so the real question is, are you ready to fight for yours?